good morning to everyone. Just one quick word. If you do not speak French, just hit the translation button on the download screen and you will have a translation in English just for you. Mais nous, on va continuer en français pour ce panel. 10 to watch, le panel 10 to watch.
That's the 10 to watch panel, a tradition in UniFrance. It's not a discovery. We already know you. You've been in other films, but you are actors or producers or directors who are at the key moment of their career, moment in which they have to be watched. And that's why UniFrance wants to shed light on them. There are 10 of you. Only 5 will be with us this morning. They were already named in TIFF. Rémi Chalier Calamity, this wonderful animation film. Suzanne Landon, who's the director, Jeremy Trouil, and Fanny Atrad, and Benjamin Voisin, who's in François Ozon's film. But today, for the panel, we have Noée, Abita, who is the actress that will be in Slalom by Charlène Favier. And you are amazing in this film, I must say, which is in Forward Cinema and was also part of 2020 Cannes selection. Zita Hanrot, you are in Red Soil, Rouge. We know that you also won the César for Most Promising Actress for Fatima and many more films. And now you are in Farid Bentoumi's film, Camélia Jordana. You're a singer, of course, but also was an actress. You also won the César for Best Most Promising Actress. And now you are in Emmanuel Mouret's film, which is also in the Cannes 2020 selection in Busan World Cinema. Love Affairs by Emmanuel Mouret. And we have Anthony Bajon next. He has 2 films in Busan, The Third Wall, Troisième, Guerre, and also Teddy. So you're both a soldier and a werewolf. That's quite different. And the most promising actor César, but also the silver gold in Berlin for The Prayer. Yeah, but I didn't get the César. No, it was a nomination, but I didn't get it. I didn't win the César. And then we have a producer, Hugo Sélignac, for Mandibles, which is in Busan, but it's been a beautiful year for you because you have Mandibles that will be released soon, and you also have Bajon. You're the head of Shifumi production company, and you have produced Swim or Sink and Mandible, which is a crazy film that I love. Thank you to the 5 of you to take part in this panel. And for all those who are listening, don't hesitate to ask questions. You have to click on the chat. You have also react, give comments on Facebook. So feel free, but I will start asking a few questions. Those who are abroad and who are watching us, maybe they wonder how we deal with this period of pandemic. This is unheard in our history. This COVID crisis is affecting cinema. So maybe all professionals are wondering where we stand in France. Have we started shooting again? Are the theaters reopening? Maybe your own point of view on the industry. Are you back to work? Tell us what the situation is for you. Who's volunteering? Camélia. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I haven't seen all members of the panel yet. Well, we're quite lucky in France because we've started shooting again. There are some restrictions, like everywhere, but well, in terms of environment, it's a bit of a disaster, but shootings had started again. They've been postponed, many of them, because some things are not feasible because there are too many restrictions. So it's quite difficult to protect people and be able to go through this crisis. So some shootings have started and some others are postponed, and we're just waiting to be able to
Quand vous avez
have
toutes les
them.
films en sortie, la promo est
You
comment?
all
Est-ce
have
que vous
films that
faites
are being
des
released.
distributions?
How
C'est
do
comment?
you
C'est
have
normal?
junkets? Do you have promotion for these films?
Pour tous ceux qui ont des films en
Sorry?
sortie, est-ce que
For
ça prend
you have
beaucoup quand il y
films
a
that
des
are going to be
films
released in France. Is it a usual promotion period for you? Yes, well, mustn't be too many of us on a set and to respect social distancing, but we can still go around in the city and go to different sets and defend the films and take part of the promotion and defend the film. And we're really lucky to be able to do that. It's also very pleasant to go and encourage people to go and see films. That's quite nice. Maybe Hugo Sélignac, as a producer, will be able to talk more about this aspect. But unexpectedly, there are films that are being very successful these days. For some films, it's more difficult, but some others are really doing well and they are seen. So go ahead, Hugo. Yes, French cinema is doing well because, of course, we're just talking about French cinema. So as all the American films are gone, all the small art house French films have 400 prints unexpectedly. So they have far more screens than expected, and they do well. Some other films don't do well, but maybe they wouldn't have anyway. And so for distribution and production, as you have to adjust, that's what we do. We're lucky to have to be supported comparing to other industries. Film industry is supported by the state and the audience is also there. So of course, a film like Mandibles that's supposed to be released on November 18 or Red Soil on 25th or Slalom on 4th, you're already spending for the promotion, for the posters, for the trailers, and all of a sudden the rules change. And they say if they put a new lockdown, so the money that you've spent is going to be lost. And when if it's more of an art house film, you don't have this blockbuster way of promoting the film. For instance, in my case, Mandibles, I start spending on the marketing, and then I hear 1 week before that we are that there is a lockdown. The distributor won't have money to do it again if the release is postponed. So these are all the uncertainties that make it a bit more difficult for us and a bit stressful. But we're really getting by quite well.
Noé, vous avez des films qui sortent
Zita,
en prochain.
Anthony, Noé, your films are released soon, so I guess there are premieres
L'interview qu'il était à Lyon
through the
pour
country.
Sélignac.
Anthony was
Est-ce
in
que vous
Lyon
ressentez
Festival
effectivement
for
cette
Teddy's
différence
premiere.
de
Do you feel that the audience is
Qu'est-ce
reacting
que vous avez un
differently
soutien du public
from the States where I feel that in France there is really a support from the audience? Do you also feel it as actors that you're supported by the audience? Exactly. Now we can really feel the importance of traveling around the country, going and thanking, greeting the audience in all the different cities of the country because people take risks and they really care about this relationship that they can have with the crew. I really enjoy every premiere as if it was the last chance that I would have to meet the audiences because as Hugo said, we are completely uncertain of what is going to happen next. So now I'm just hanging and enjoying every bit of the moment that I can share with the audience. And I feel very grateful for their presence, for their support, to be able to talk about the film with them. That's very important for all of us. I don't know if Noé and Anthony feel the same, but wearing these masks when there is a Q&A after a film is very strange because you don't see people's expression. You don't see if they like the film or not. You don't see the face they put. So that brings some distance too. But I still feel, in spite of this desire to go back to theaters, to see films, to support cinema, and we're very fortunate. How do you feel? Are you annoyed by the mask also? Of course, it's a pity, but at the same time, if it's the only way to have these theaters open and to have people, yes, of course, we don't see people smile. We cannot read on their faces how they feel, but it's something we have to put up with. I was very happy after the day President Macron announced the curfew. I was in Bourg-Saint-Maurice, which is a small village in the mountains, and there were so many people that they had to open 3 theaters, and it was sold out. And that's really such a joy, and it's so touching to see that just after um, the curfew, people still come to the cinemas and they come to see films. They want to go out and get together to watch films. They do protect themselves because they have to, and it's important, but they are not afraid of being with the others and enjoying cinema. Anthony, you had the privilege of being in a film festival, which doesn't happen often these days. You were in Lyon to introduce Teddy, and how was it? Well, it's always a gift to be able to go to festival for the promotion of films because you feel this enthusiasm of the audiences for the films. And it's not just a gift for us as the crew, but it's also an event. It's really, it does matter for the audience. So when there were these Q&As, we realized that it's really our responsibility to make good films because these people really care. They have this desire. It really matters for them. So we're responsible. What's at stake is making good films and not to fool them. I love this panel that I'm seeing because you represent the diversity of French cinema. There's not one film that is like the other. So we have werewolf, we have environmental thriller, we have a film on sexual harassment, we have a story of a giant fly. I love to see this diversity. That what makes the vitality of French cinema. As a producer, as an actor, how can you explain this diversity? Is it, do you have to fight to achieve it? I'm volunteering to answer first. Yes, as you say, it is very diverse, French cinema. And being here part of this selection of 10 to watch, I really admire all of my peers, and I'm delighted to be part of this cast, so to say. So, and as you said, it is a struggle. We have to fight for it because sometimes the market can kill uh, some films that don't make enough money. So as Anthony said, in order to have great films, different ways of making films, different subject matters, to have this diversity, there is support in France, obviously, but we also have to educate the audiences. Although I also enjoy Netflix, I think this uniformity of what's offered on the platform mustn't also have an influence on films that are released in theaters that are extremely diverse. So nowadays there is a very critical situation, and we really have to be very careful not to offer a unique vision through the films that we make. Hugo, when you start a project, are you aware of these struggles when you choose whether it's an action film or a comedy? Do you want it to be diverse? Exactly. I mean, we are extremely privileged. Even if we didn't have any specific support or funding for Quentin's films, but he very often has this state support, and it's very important to go on fighting for this cultural exception. And when we see the state of independent cinema all over the world, the French case is extremely precious, and we must go on trying to make different films. And very often, films that are not expected to do well, they do when they're well made. A film that can be made with a very small budget, the budget doesn't matter as much as making a good film, and to encourage directors and crews to make all different kinds of films, and to make it. I've never made a film with 100,000 euros, but the budget can be 2 millions or 20 millions. What matters is that it does well, that it works, and it's seen. Oh, we can't hear you anymore. So whether it's Mandibles or Back Now, they all have their own ambition and their own target to have their audiences. I try to take part in good films, and whether it's in France or abroad, a good film always finds its audience and takes part in this diversity. In the States, in Hollywood, the young actors go to films that can help them build their career. Whereas when I see you, Noé or Anthony, is that you take risks. You just commit to all these kind of films. Are you also offered more commercial, more mainstream films? How do you end up in these kinds of projects? Personally, I really don't ask myself this kind of questions, wondering if what I'm doing is diverse, or I just meet a director, male or female. I get along well with their personality, with their artistic sense, and I just take the plunge. And I'm really happy to go and live this experience with them. And when the film at the end is a beautiful, beautiful film, it's wonderful. But even if the result is not as well as expected, it's not a big deal for me because the experience is still precious. That's how I really see my way of working. And I guess it's the same for the others, maybe. Sure, we have all kinds of offers, more conventional films, more risky films, and at our ages we must be able to take risk, because if not, when are we going to do this? Many actors tell me that they had some offers and they refused them because they were sure that the films wouldn't work. And I think it's a pity, because if the director is interesting, if the script is interesting, you shouldn't be only thinking about the money that it would make. At the same time, some people are interested in conventional films, but then that would mean that diversity would disappear. It would be a pity. So if you want to be an actor, a producer, or director, it's also because you're interested in this diversity. So you must go and touch the essence of each world inside a project. Zita and Camélia, I guess that you have been far enough in your career to be able to choose to pick up the films that you make. Camélia, now you're working with Emmanuel Mouret, kind of thing that you've never done before. And you, Zita, in Rouge, Red Sky, you have a beautiful relationship, a father-daughter relationship. Are you aware that you are taking a certain direction, or do you do it spontaneously? Well, I do both. I have two films that are very different. Love Affairs by Emmanuel Mouret, but also a very conventional blockbuster comedy that is distributed by the main French channel, TF1. And I love it. I like this being versatile and making all kinds of films. It's very important to keep in mind that if the blockbusters um, don't work, or La Nuit est venue that in which I played just after the lockdown with a very small budget. Really tiny budget. But if there are no blockbusters and they don't work, then the small art house films that have very small audiences cannot exist. So there is an interaction between these two trends. As Noé was putting it, when you choose this craft, it's also because you want to meet people. It's the encounters and the possibility of becoming, of embodying different characters. And this is what's fabulous, and that's what's very playful in this craft, the joy of inventing a character and being able to do it, being a crazy teacher with Vincent de Dienne, as I am now, or another film that is in Chinese, playing a stripper in film. It's very exciting. These are two very opposite films, but we just pray and we do hope and we cross our fingers for all these films to be well, because also as a viewer, you want to see a film that carries you away and fills you with joy. So as an actor, you also do the same. You take part in the project, and the bonus would be to have a wonderful film at the end. You have to put here. Sorry. Can you ask me the question again? What question? What are you talking about? No, I was just.
De cash out, de prendre des gros films ou de.
No, I was just wondering what happens more is to make a film that would be. You want to see when I choose a project whether it has to be a blockbuster or. Well, it's not an easy question. It's a question of choices, because when I was younger and I was just starting this job, and I was so excited whenever I had an offer, and then I had this I read the interviews of the stars who said it's hard to choose, and I was like, what's hard? You should take everything, because I was just excited by the idea of working, of having more films to work on. And now I start realizing that, as Noé was putting it, there are these encounters, the energy than a director or an actor with whom you can work on a project that makes you go for it. Sorry, I'm a bit lost. But it's also the topics, but you don't really know beforehand if it's going to work or not. Something that Noé has understood very quickly is the process of the creation of the film, the sets. We cannot really master what's going to happen after. As Andre Agassi said, just control what you can control. So we're on the set, we give our best. And to not to be self-indulgent, really give your best and do the best you can. And then wait and see what's going to happen. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Sorry, I lost track of what I was saying. Just one thing I'd like to add is that Noé and Anthony, just in case our viewers are not sure, and I are just a bit older than Noé and Anthony, as if we had the choice and they hadn't. It's not the case at all, because they really have choice too, and they make wonderful choices. Okay.
Il y a une autre caractéristique que j'ai notée sur le cinéma français récemment. C'est pas nouveau, c'est pas quelque chose
Something else
mais
that I've
ça s'est très accentué en ce moment.
noticed recently, even if it's not
Le
new,
cinéma français
but
n'hésite
it's
pas
more the case
à
nowadays, is that
attaquer les
French
problématiques de
cinema
nos sociétés.
tackles
Parmi vous, il y a trois films que vous avez
social
dans la liste.
issues. There are three of the films that you represent
Sélignac,
today. It's
le
Slalom
premier,
about
le
sexual
terrorisme en
harassment,
conséquence,
Third World about the consequences of terrorism, and also Rouge, Red Soil, which is an environmental thriller about the polluting discharge, but also last year, By the Grace of God, by François Ozon. It's not new, but today more than ever, I feel that French cinema tackles very present social issues. Do you feel that French cinema wants to be more committed than ever these days?
Noé. Voilà, j'ai décidé.
I decided Noé was going to answer. I don't think that cinema is trying to be more committed. Cinema has always been political. There's always been political films and others that have other reasons to exist. It's just, at least about the films that I shot about sexual harassment and sexual abuse. I hate it when people say it's the news. It's not at all the news. There's always been sexual harassment. What's new is that it's mentioned in the media and people are talking about it, and it's not a taboo anymore, and people dare talk about it. So, of course, in these waves, there might be more films that deal with this subject, because it's high time to talk about it and to. So I don't know if it's they're more political, maybe if the other films you feel are more related to the present situation. It's true that nowadays there's focus on political films, but I think there have always been in the history of cinema.
Anthony, la Troisième Guerre, c'est
Anthony, the third wall is very clever in the way it deals not only, not really in terrorism, but in the fight against terrorism. and the consequences that it had. Do you also see it as a political
Oui,
film?
oui, j'ai l'impression que c'est forcément avec un sujet comme ça peut
Yes,
être
of
très
course, with
politique et
the
pourtant on y reste
subject
vraiment
matter, it is obviously political.
de l'intérieur quoi, de ces soldats
But you see it from
voilà,
the
c'est un film sur la
inside.
solitude, c'est un
It's
film
also a film about
sur
solitude
aussi la
for
quête
the
d'identité du
soldiers
personnage de Léo
and the
justement
search of
et
identity of
c'est
Leo's
surtout un peu
character.
sur euh, la passivité de ces gens-là qui pour autant
It's
ramassent des armes de guerre
about how
et
passive these
derrière tout ça,
people are. They
c'est
have
c'est des gens sur
weapons
lesquels il faut
on
vraiment avoir un
them, but
combat
there's
et c'est
nothing
un
they
film
can
qui
do.
parle
We
vraiment
didn't
de
even look
de
at
leur
them
émancipation
when we
alors que si on
uh,
réfléchit 2 secondes, ils sont là juste pour nous
bump
défendre
into them on the
et
streets, whereas they're
voilà,
here to
s'ils n'ont pas
defend
de
us.
médaille, c'est des gens qui sont très silencieux,
So these
qui n'ont
people ask for no medal, they
et
ask for no compliments, for
en
no
revanche, nous, on les regarde de loin
recognition,
parce qu'on a envie de
and
les
we
défendre.
ignore them, whereas they're here to defend us,
Et
to
puis
protect
Zita,
us.
le Rouge, là, c'est carrément, on peut le dire, un film politique, un film engagé, un film qui y va.
Zita, I think we can say that Red Soil
Avec
is a
en
very,
plus
Red
des
Soil is
personnages en
a
plus
very
où là, l'histoire conclut
political
déjà
and
entre
committed
un père et
film.
sa
And
fille qui
as
est
we say,
passionnante.
this beautiful
Euh,
relationship between a father and a
C'était une
daughter.
film, c'était pour ça que vous y êtes allé?
Is it
Alors
why
moi,
you
ce qui
took
m'a
part in the
frappé,
project?
comme tu dis, c'est vraiment la
What
relation au
I
début de
found
perso
really striking was this relationship between the father
qui
and
m'a
the
énormément
daughter.
bouleversée parce que je trouve
That's really
que Farid Bentoumi, le scénariste et le
overwhelmed
réalisateur du
me
film,
because Farid
a très
Bentoumi,
bien
the
retranscrit
scriptwriter
ce
and the
moment-là
director, has really
de
been
bascule.
able to
Mon personnage avait mon âge à l'époque quand
show
je l'ai joué,
this
donc 29 ans.
shift
Et
in the
c'est vrai,
character
ce moment-là, en
that
tout cas,
was
moi,
29
m'intéressait
years old
beaucoup.
as me at the moment I shot
Ce
the film,
moment où,
and
en
I was
fait,
really interested to
on, on-
observe
on-
this moment in
on
her
voyait les
life
choses quoi, à travers
in
le regard de
which
l'enfant.
we
On voyait
see
pas les brèches et
through
que
her
cette
gaze
bascule avec un regard plus lucide
how
sur
she
les parents, sur
changes
le fait qu'ils
her
ne soient pas
gaze
des
on
héros
her parents.
sans faille.
She stops seeing her
Et
parents
c'est
as
vrai que
perfect heroes.
je trouvais que c'était un film sur
And this,
comment je l'ai interprété la première
the
fois, quoi,
way
quand je l'ai
I
lu,
interpreted it the
vraiment
first time that
ce
I read the
passage
script, is really
de la
this
fin de l'enfance,
coming of
vraiment de l'enfance
age period,
enfouie,
the
quoi,
end of
et
the childhood that you
de
keep in
ce nouveau
yourself,
regard en fait que mon
and
personnage
how
porte
you
sur
change
les
your
gens qui
way
l'entourent, sur
of
le décor qui l'entoure.
looking
Donc c'est vrai que c'est
the
ça qui
people who
m'a
are around you, the places
d'abord bouleversée
in
et
which you
ensuite
live.
la question
I was
écologique en fait.
really
Moi je suis
touched by
rentrée dans
it.
ce
And
film
then the
vraiment par le
second
côté
aspect,
famille et
the
c'est ce que je trouve
environmental
la force du
aspect,
film,
is something that
c'est
came
qu'on
after
rentre
for me.
vraiment
It was really the
par
family
la petite porte
issue
dans
that
un
I
problème
found was
politique
very
d'ampleur
interesting.
comme
So
ça,
we start with a
quelque
very
chose où on
intimate
peut tous se raccrocher et
and
moi j'ai pu
private
me raccrocher à
approach
ce
of
personnage
um,
d'amour, le personnage qui
um,
devient lanceuse d'alerte
a
et son destin assez héroïque qui peut
general
être assez
story which
intimidant
is
et en fait
more
par le
political
rencontrer voilà
and
comme ça
global.
par les liens
But
dans une
entering
famille,
this
je
subject
pense qu'on peut
by
tous
the family
comprendre ça et ressentir ça
relationship is
et
something that anyone can
c'est vrai
relate to.
que c'est un film qui est engagé, etc. Mais
So it is a
moi, je
commented
me suis pas dit,
film,
ah, j'ai
but
envie maintenant
I
d'en faire un film sur
didn't
l'écologie.
decide and
C'est
say,
là que
okay,
j'ai
now I'm
écrit, je veux
going
un
to
film sur
make an
l'écologie. Ça se
environment
passe pas du
film,
tout
and
comme ça. C'est que j'ai lu le
I'm
scénario et je me
trying
suis dit,
to
c'est
uh,
super bien écrit, c'est hyper
make
émouvant
this
et
choice
j'ai
of
envie de faire
making a
partie
film about
de cette
environment.
histoire.
It's just because I
Et
found the
ensuite,
film extremely
en effet,
moving,
ce qui est très
extremely
intéressant
honest,
dans le
and I was
processus
really
de film,
touched
je
by
sais pas
it
si Anthony
that I
aussi
went into it. And it's retrospectively that I
de
think that
ça,
it was
où
very interesting to
c'est rencontrer des personnes
make a film
qui ont
that
été
people can
victimes
relate to
en fait
nowadays. And
de
I
Rouge,
don't know if
cette
Antonia and
pollution
Noé did
pour
the
Rouge,
same, but also
rencontrer des lanceurs
all the
d'alerte, voir
research
la
work
solitude
of
d'interdiction,
meeting
etc.
people
De
who
faire aussi tout ce
have
travail
been
d'écologie qui fait
victims
que
of this
bah,
pollution and who've done
ça
all this
relève un petit peu
investigation. That's also very
et que rien ne
interesting,
soit
very
dit. Voilà.
enriching to
Camélia, c'est
go
vrai,
and
parce que
search.
ce que dit Zita, moi, c'est ce que j'ai ressenti en regardant le brio.
That's
C'est-à-dire que
interesting.
ce
What
qui m'a
Zita
plu dans
is
le film,
saying
c'est
is
le
when I
focus
saw
sur le jeu entre
Brio,
Noé
I loved the
et tout.
writing
Mais ce que j'ai entendu partout, c'était
between
juste
Daniel
des
Auteuil
commentaires
and
sur la
you,
diversité,
but
sur
people were
le
talking
sujet
about
qu'il soulevait, etc.
diversity
Est-ce
and
que,
the subject matter
moi,
of
je
the
trouverais ça, est-ce
film.
que ça vous gonfle qu'on parle que de ça et pas
Are you a bit tired
du
of
sujet
hearing only about diversity
du
and
film
not
avec Auteuil,
dealing
de comment ça
about
marchait? Est-ce que
the
c'était
film,
pour
how you
moi ou est-ce que
worked with
on pense qu'on veut?
Daniel Auteuil,
Non, je
or
vous avoue,
you
c'est la
don't?
première fois qu'on m'en parle sous cet angle et je trouve pas que ce soit le film le plus
Oh
politique
no, really? I don't think it's a
que j'ai
political
dépassé.
film. I don't think
Oui,
anyone.
mais par
The
contre,
first
moi,
time
dans mon
people tell
enfance,
me that it's a political
on en
film.
parlait, la diversité,
Well, no, but in France, people would on the radio when they talked about the film, it was about diversity, whereas the film is for me more about the relationship between a student and a teacher. To be honest, I never considered it with a political approach, although of course it is in this very conservative university in Paris, and although the university has changed since, and this teacher is not racist, he's just a bit conservative, and so it's the kind of his way of um, starting a discussion, a relationship with the student. So it just is very often see in films of two people who are completely opposed and happen to need each other and have to get along together. But the political stake in the choice of films, as far as I'm concerned, I feel that all our generation who are under 40, we are part of a very specific generation in France. And we have this awareness of the world in which we live, of the state of our country, and how people feel in our country. We know that we are privileged to be able to go on working in spite of this pandemic. We are on social networks and we see and read about people that we find interesting. We're connected to the world on a global level. And I also feel that French directors are younger and younger. They start earlier and earlier. So now that younger people can express themselves nowadays, it naturally makes them deal with subjects that they worry about. And that's really the strength of cinema, is to be able to deal with the subject that you care about and your privacy, what you feel deep inside. And that's what makes cinema very rich and diverse in France, but also elsewhere. So there is this diversity, this cultural exception of when we see films and when we have traveled with our films all over the world, and we can compare French cinema to other uh, countries, and when we see the number of art house auteur films in France that travel all over the world, have such densities of richness of the landscape in France is very positive. So that's why there is probably this focus on political subjects. Do you receive a lot of scripts like this that deal with political matters? Not specifically, I wouldn't say. People haven't seen Mandibles yet, but there can also be messages in a crazy comedy with a giant fly. People who can make money with their giant fly, and when they fail, they realize that the only thing that matters is their friendship. So even in a crazy comedy, there can be a message and a social or political content. The same with Swim or Sink. That's a typical comedy, mainstream comedy, but there is some content in it. That's also one of the strengths of French cinema. There are all different kinds of ways of passing on messages. So it's not that I'm searching some specific films, but I just want to produce films that I can relate to and I find touching. And there are all kinds of subjects that can do this. So just making a film for a topic is not enough for me. I mean, as a producer, I'm not saying, okay, now let's make a film about environment or let's make a film about this or that. It's the whole pack of an interesting director, an interesting story. And so if on top of it, the film can help people being aware of some social issues, it's wonderful. But first of all, what I want is to produce people who have stories to tell. But as a producer, I'm not trying to choose a subject that would be fashionable or very pleasant.
Bon, bah, cette année, ça n'a pas trop été le cas, mais quand on a un film à défendre, on voyage à travers le monde avec ce film.
When you
On expérimente la façon
promote a film, you travel with it all over the world and you see how people
Los Angeles déjà.
receive your film.
Très bien,
Camélia and Zita have already
comment le public réagit différemment par rapport au pays.
seen you
J'ai
in
envie de
Los
demander
Angeles, so
comment
I feel that you
est-ce que vous
see how
sentez que
people
l'image du cinéma français a
receive
changé
your
en
films.
France?
And do you feel that the image of French
J'ai
cinema
pas
has
cette
changed
réflexion
recently?
de
Have you
voir
noticed an
qui
evolution?
fait ce qui est très chouette avec
No,
le
I don't
festival,
have
c'est
this
que
impression.
le
What
festival
was
c'est
really
toujours
nice
de Rio et ce qui
when
était
I was
hyper
in
joyeux, c'est que
Cultural Festival
les
in
festivals
LA
invitent
is that with
des
Rio,
producteurs et des distributeurs là-bas
that's
régulièrement
where
pour
I
venir montrer
realized that
Venise
they
et tout
wanted to
Rouge
make a remake of
c'est
this film in the States.
enfin, c'est la magie de l'art en fait.
And
Enfin,
that's the magic of art, is
c'est
that you
universel quoi.
go there with a story and then
D'ailleurs,
you realize that
en
it's
musique,
universal.
comme ça en
It's the
photographie,
same in
ça passe.
music, in
Finalement,
photo,
peu importe ce que tu
in
racontes, les gens sont
film.
susceptibles
No
d'être
matter
touchés par
what
l'histoire que tu racontes.
story you
Ça,
tell, people
c'est
can
le
relate
réalisateur
to
et
it all over the
l'artiste.
world. When I say I tell a story,
Donc,
it's not me, it's the director, of course.
pour ce qui est de la réaction du public, voilà, je suis
So
surprise
that's as far as
j'ai pas
the
l'impression qu'il y ait de la question de
reception
savoir ton film
is concerned. I don't
pour
feel
moi,
that
c'est
it's
tout de même
different
différent.
elsewhere.
Maintenant, ouais, non, pour ce qui est du regard sur le cinéma français, on revient sur ce
As
que
for
disait
the
Noé, c'est
evolution
vrai, en
of the
fait,
image of
on a,
French
on a la chance
cinema,
après la Seconde Guerre mondiale d'avoir des gens qui
it's
ont
true that
pensé
it's quite exceptional.
aux
After Second
compétitions de
World
science ou de
War,
critique qui
there's
permettraient
been
après de
this
financer le cinéma
reflection
français. Et
to
ça,
make
c'est quelque chose, ça
10%
part bien
of
passé.
each ticket
Et en même
sold
temps,
to be able to finance cinema. And this wonderful
je veux dire,
idea is
ça fait
still
partie de l'histoire de la France, en
supporting
fait.
us and
Donc là, déjà, on peut
saving
y
us. And
avoir
it's part of the
du
history of France
divertissement, alors qui est à la base pour les
to
petits,
have
et qui, à
this
travers des années,
entertainment that
des
was
siècles, en fait,
first
c'est popularisé parce qu'il y avait, on a
targeted
beau
for
avoir
the
un roi qui avait son
richest
cocon, on avait toujours des vaudevilles sur le
people
boulevard
in the
et qui
society.
étaient
And first
payants
it
et qui
was
étaient sur les grands boulevards
the
et là
King's
c'était des
Fool,
entrées
and
libres
then you had the
et
theaters on
il y
the
a une stratégie
boulevards in Paris, and that's
française
all
pour
part of the
accéder à l'art et je
tradition,
pense que
the
nous aussi
cultural
on veut pouvoir
tradition of
vivre avec et
France
qu'on
of
voit aussi ça
having
sur
this
notre vécu
access to art.
et à l'étranger oui je
And
pense que
for
c'est des gens
us,
qui
we've
je suis pas
grown
d'accord
with
de voir
this, so
évoluer je
it's
pense
not
qu'il y a vraiment
always conscious.
de
It's
grands coups
part
de
of our
cœur
lives.
des gens qui
But
pensent à ça
we see this
et
also. We see that people really
Et
love
est-ce
it
qu'il y a
and
une autre
enjoy it all
information
over the world.
depuis quelques maintenant dizaines d'années, le
And
cinéma français s'est
Hugo,
positionné cinéma américain à
now
l'étranger, enfin
French
plus
cinema
démocratisé
is
aussi
not
sur certains
only
genres.
uh,
Est-ce que vous sentez cette
art house films, there are also
qui
action
parce que je pense
films,
qu'il y a des pays comme Bac Nord que vous voyagez aussi.
or genre films. Do you feel that there is an expectation to make this kind of genre films or action films? A film like Bac Nord can work abroad. Well, now there is, with all the platforms and the explosion of the digital distribution, you see that now I've worked on a first feature film, Julien Royal. It was really difficult to finance it, and with the conventional ways of financing films, and then the platforms come and accept financing a film with no star on the cast, and to give the opportunity to a young director first of a debut film of having 9 weeks instead of 5 to shoot his film. So a film like Le Monde est à toi or Le Chant du Loup, The Wolf's Call or Back North, these are films that we sold to Netflix because there are theatrical releases in France, but all over the world, in the rest of the world, we're on Netflix. And so for some films, mostly action films, that's a wonderful opportunity because a film that makes less than 5, that makes a big hit in France, and then uh, it gets one, the Wolf's Call, what's filmed 65 million, had 65 million views all over the world. I was with François Civil in a restaurant, and then there was some Brazilians eating at the next table, and they came and talked to François Civil as if he was a Brazilian star because they see him in their living room. You know, like in the old times when somebody was on TV, they became a very big star, and now it's a bit the same with Netflix. People really feel close to these people, and it's going to be the same with Teddy, probably Teddy, in which Anthony is. It's a bit the same like Mandible. These films were supposed to be released last spring at the moment of the lockdown, and I was very surprised to see that these platforms came to us, came to films like this, like My When, all these art house auteur films, and really having this desire, this impulse of exporting French films. Of course, there is Les Miserables or Céline Sciamma's film. These are exceptions that are big hits abroad. But I've also seen films that would have one print in New York and that was it. So you feel great because the film has been released in the States, but one print in New York is seen just by the French expats. So platforms now give us an opportunity and exposure that is unheard of. So these films, Le Monde est à toi or The Wolf's Call, are action films, but Mandibles, which is a bit of of a crazy film, it's is a comedy that people can also relate to all over the world. So it might also go through platforms. So this is really an asset for the French films, I think. Well, I'm younger, but I also love it.
Alors j'ai Mike, je ne
Mandibles.
sais pas d'où il est, mais qui me demande, qui me pose cette question.
So a question from Mike.
C'est une bonne question. Est-ce que le cinéma français accueille les jeunes talents facilement?
Does French cinema open easily to young
Ça
talent?
dépend, hein. Franchement, ça
Well, it
dépend.
depends.
Parfois des castings sauvages avec des directrices et directeurs de casting
Yes,
sauvages qui
sometimes
fonctionnent
you
magnifiques.
have this
Vont trouver
very
dans la rue.
wild
Parfois,
casting processes when they pick up people on the
à
street,
avoir
and
pas forcément très
uh,
connus, mais
some directors
j'ai l'impression en
want to
tout cas
work with
de ma
non-actors or
petite
people who
fenêtre
are
que
not
c'est
famous,
pas tous les
but
jours, c'est pas dans tous les films,
I don't feel that
mais il y a
it's
encore un petit entre-soi en
often
maths et j'ai l'impression qu'il
the
s'ouvre de plus en
case
plus
that
justement comme on disait
it's
par
still
par des
more
réalisatrices et des
trend
réalisateurs
is
de
to
plus
work with the
talentueux
happy few who are
et
part
c'est
of
dur aussi de voir de nouvelles têtes, de
of,
révéler de nouveaux comédiens.
of
Donc il y a aussi pas mal
this milieu, but there is also
c'est
this
hyper formateur
desire
pour les
of
réalisateurs et les réalisatrices
discovering
de
new
trouver
faces
des talents.
and to reveal
Après,
a
je sais
talent.
qu'avec les distributeurs, c'est toujours j'ai
But
l'impression
then
un peu le combat.
distributors, they still prefer to have famous faces. Yes, of course, there is this fight. It depends on roles. When you're going to look for a teenager, you'd rather uh, choose actors who are good actors but who are not famous. It really depends of the role, it depends of the budget. There are rules. If the director is not a star, if he's not François Ozon, it's difficult to make a film only with actors that are not famous. But when it's a debut film like Sherazade, it was a first feature film and with two young newcomers. So some projects are designed maybe for this, but it's for a director or a producer, it's wonderful to have new talents. And all of you had the most promising actor, Cesar. No, Anthony didn't. He was nominated, but he didn't. But that's, of course, when you can, you should do it, but maybe you don't do it enough. Great new talents. But if you want to have TV support, if you want to, if you don't have all the supports of the regions, of French television channel, of all the national funds, then it's hard to take too many risks. So there are helps for young directors and young actors. But if we have no public support, it's more difficult. That's why I say that Netflix, I'm sorry, I'm promoting Netflix. But it's quite surprising. It's because sometimes I went saying, I don't have this or that actor, and they really don't care. Sometimes they want a film on a specific star, but for some other projects, I had dropped some names to make it sound more interesting, but then the actors are in their 20s, so they don't even know them. So the platforms are changing the rules. So it's, of course, the US changing the rules again, but on the French side of the French distributors, I see that they are encouraged by this way of platforms, and so they take more risks and they also focus more on the film than on the cast. I love discovering new talents in cinema. When I saw Anthony in The Prayer or Noé in Slalom, it's just a revelation. So I want to ask the two of you, that's a difficult path. Is it difficult to start a career in film? If you look back at your very first steps, how difficult was it?
Bah, j'ai pas envie de vous dire que c'est difficile,
Oh, I
parce
won't
que
say it was difficult.
moi, j'ai eu la chance
I was
de
really
débarquer un peu dans le cinéma
privileged
par hasard. J'ai fait
to
mon premier casting,
start
et
cinema by
c'est par
total
mon premier
chance.
casting que j'ai fait mon premier film qui était
I
Ava.
had a first
Donc
audition
après,
for
tout
Ava, which
s'est
was the first
enchaîné
film in
petit
which
à
I
petit.
was,
Et
and
comme
then
je
it
disais tout à
went
l'heure,
quite
j'ai la chance de
easily. And as I
travailler
said, I
avec
was
des
really
gens
lucky
jeunes
to work with
Français
people that I loved and I respected
qui me font grandir. Donc non,
and
c'est
who
c'est
helped me
pas
grow.
difficile.
So I won't complain. I won't say
Chacun
it
vit
was
la vie comme
difficult.
moi. Pour nous, on est là,
As far as I'm
c'est
concerned,
difficile.
the
Il y en a
five
qui
of us who are
bossent
here didn't have
au
to struggle.
conservatoire,
Some
qui ont pas de
people come
travail.
out of conservatory or film
Voilà, après,
schools
c'est
or
difficile
acting
à
schools
d'autres
and
aussi.
find no job.
Nous, ça va quand même.
So of course it can be difficult for many people, but I don't think we can complain. What you do in slalom is not that easy.
Je détaillerai pas mon travail, mais
Yeah, of course, I'm not
difficile et que
saying that my work is easy.
les émotions,
I know that it can
ça peut être
touch the
carrément
soul and emotions
c'est
and
fatigant, mais c'est enrichissant, surtout quand on fait
interpreting a
ce
character
qu'on
like this can be very demanding and difficult, but that's part of the craft.
Anthony, un petit retour sur les débuts et moi je crois que
Anthony, can you tell us a bit about your debut? I think Cedric can, when he saw your audition, he said, I feel I see Gérard Depardieu in Novecento. Well, I had to pay him for
c'est agréable. Après, moi, j'avais déjà répondu à la
to hear
question
that I had
sur la petite
already
étiquette et que
said that I
je voulais
didn't
pas
want this
associer
label.
qui que ce soit.
I don't want to be associated to anyone.
Non, non, mais voilà, Depardieu, il a fait une très belle carrière et
Depardieu
j'ai
has
envie
had a
de faire
beautiful
la mienne
career, and I want to
sur
have
ce
my
parcours, ou
own.
Patrick Devers, comme ça
And
a
I
été le
don't
cas
want to
après.
be compared
Pour
to
revenir
Depardieu
la
or
question
to Patrick
initiale,
Devers or whoever.
enfin, on fait un des plus beaux métiers du monde
We have
et
one of the most beautiful jobs in the
on est
world.
poussé par notre passion à faire ça.
And of
Comme je disais,
course,
apprendre des textes
we have
et à
this
vraiment aller plus loin que
stamina
la
of
caméra. Il
of
y a
our
quelqu'un qui regarde un
passion.
truc comme ça qui se dit, oh là là.
And then
C'est ça, mais et à la
if
fois, moi, je
you
crois que la difficulté de ce métier, elle réside
feel
aussi
that
à pouvoir gérer le truc comme un marathon, c'est-à-dire vraiment avoir un fil
it's
conducteur, de se dire,
a
bah,
kind
je
of
vais essayer de partir sur ce
marathon.
truc-là
So you
et
have
de vraiment garder une ligne
one
qui avance
line
comme un
that you
avion
have
invisible
to
et
follow
pouvoir
and then
inclure
have
les spectateurs dans ce truc-là, aller
some
chercher vraiment quelque chose de très éclectique. C'est pour ça que moi,
things to
quand
adjust.
j'ai fait Teddy, quand
And
vous avez
I
lancé
want
Guerre,
to do very
c'était
diverse. I want to have
super
a very
d'encourager les autres à
versatile
prendre des choses
career.
différemment.
So that was interesting for me to
Et
be able to do very
c'est ça,
different
il faut trouver
roles.
une cohérence tout en
So there
allant
you
chercher quelque
must
chose
be
de presque
consistent,
maximal.
but at the
Pour moi, c'est
same
plutôt ça la
time
difficulté de ce métier.
have some touches of contrast. That's what's difficult maybe to find this balance. Maybe just a word. It's a question from Stefan, a question about short films. You're going to shoot a short film soon. It's the very important stage working in short films. Are you open to that? We've just done it. I'm sorry. We've just done it with Noé in a film called Harmony with Alma Jodorowsky, and it was wonderful to be able to get back to something that is more of a craftsman's work, and I say it in the good way, something that really have this craftsman's aspect comparing to the to feature films where you have lights and makeup and all the luxury of industry, whereas these short films is a kind of lab, is a place to experiment, and very often they mean to make feature films afterwards. But so we have this in mind, but
Bah
we
ouais,
enjoy
ouais,
this
moi
step.
j'adore les courts-métrages
I love
vidéo
short
et je vais
films.
continuer à en faire. Enfin, je
I
trouve ça,
go on
je
working
trouve
for
ça
short
génial
films because I
comme
really
travail.
find it
C'est
very
un
interesting.
exercice complètement différent d'un film.
It's a very
C'est
different
très difficile en fait
exercise.
d'écrire
It's
un
very
court-métrage
difficult to
assez
write a
large
short film.
que des courts-métrages soient bien. Pas parce qu'ils sont faits par
There are not
des jeunes
that
réalisateurs,
many of them
mais
that
parce que
are really
l'écriture
well made,
est
not because the
autre
directors are young,
parfois
because
et
the writing and the
c'est
rhythm is
souvent
very
plus
difficult.
donc j'adore cet
And
exercice,
it's
j'adore
not easy to
vraiment
achieve it. And I
personne avant
love
le
this
travail
exercise. And I love again to meet
voilà, je
people
trouve
through
que c'est
them.
nécessaire,
I
c'est
find
une
it
œuvre à part entière et c'est
necessary.
dommage qu'elle soit pas plus mise en
It's
avant
a work of
pour
art
ça,
in
quoi.
itself, and it should be celebrated as this. And Zita,
Non, j'ai
you
réalisé l'année
shot
dernière,
a
donc pour
short film.
présenter
Yes,
à
I
Cannes
shot it last year,
en 2019.
and
C'était
it
avec
was in
le
Cannes
Talent Cannes
in
Adami.
2019 in
Et
Adami
le projet,
Talent Cannes.
en gros, c'est de mettre en avant des jeunes acteurs, donc il y a
And the
Mimi qui en avait fait
idea
partie,
is to
de
work with young
mettre en valeur
actors
des
who
jeunes
are
acteurs
my
qui
age
ne sont pas forcément connus. Et,
and who are
donc, c'est
actors who are
vraiment,
not
moi,
famous.
ce que j'ai aimé, c'est
And what
d'écrire
I loved was
pour
to
les acteurs
write for these
et
actors
essayer de les servir au mieux
and try
pour
to
que
help
ce soit
them
aussi pour eux comme une carte de visite.
as
Pour
well
moi,
as I
c'était
could
une vraie expérience et
so
c'était
that
un
they
film à
could
part
both
entière. C'était
use
pas,
this
je
experience.
pense
And
pas que
for
c'était
me too,
une
it
espèce de
was
teaser,
really a
mais un long
film. It
métrage à
wasn't
venir
a teaser of a
parce qu'il y a un thème aussi qui est
feature
imposé.
film.
Mais
It was
ce que je
really a
trouve très
work in
intéressant, c'est
itself.
que moi j'ai très envie de passer à la réalisation,
And I
au métrage
really looking
aussi,
forward to
et
start
ça permet
shooting
d'appréhender un
also
plateau à
feature
cette
films
place-là
and to
de
direct films.
réalisatrice,
And so being on a
de
set
comprendre
as a
ce que c'est
director
qu'effectivement
and
c'est pas d'un film,
understand
que
what it
la
means
post-production d'un film,
to the pre-production of a film, then the post-production of the film, going the whole process and experience this process and see if I really like it.
Et donc, je trouve, en fait, je trouve que de toute façon, le court-métrage, c'est une œuvre en soi.
But
C'est
again, for me, a
un
short
peu le
film
même titre qu'un long
is a
métrage. Pour moi,
piece
c'est,
of art in
c'est
itself.
bon, il y a
It's
certains
a
courts-métrages
film.
qui sont peut-être plus dans l'idée de faire un teaser aussi.
Maybe
Et je
some
dis pas
short
aujourd'hui que
films
c'est pas
have
bien,
this
c'est un
idea of
genre
being a
qui prend
teaser
son temps,
for
etc. Mais moi, je trouve
a
que c'est une
longer
approche
film,
pas
for a
évidente. En plus,
feature
c'est si
film,
mal
and
arrivé
then
jouer dans un
to
court-métrage.
finance it. But for me, it can also be a
Parce
film
que
in itself. And when I
l'histoire
play in a
m'a
short film, as I'm
profondément
about to do,
égaye
I'll
et
do it
plu.
because I was really touched. I
Et
could
donc,
relate to the
voilà,
story.
voilà, c'est quelque
And I
chose,
I have the same
je suis
approach
très
as
ouverte aussi
for
pour
a
ça parce que je trouve
feature
que
film, and I'm really
c'est
open
une
to
œuvre à part
these
entière.
projects.
On n'a plus beaucoup de temps. Je vais conclure par une question sur laquelle je conclue toujours parce qu'il faut toujours.
So maybe the
citant François
last
Truffaut,
question,
pour
because
conclure
we
d'accord
should
avec toi.
one should always quote
Il a dit un
François
jour
Truffaut.
que plus on parle de
He
son
said
village,
once
plus
that
il va
the
avoir
more you
de
talk
réussite.
about
Est-ce que
your
vous avez l'impression
village,
que c'est
the
ça
more you
le
talk
secret
to
de
the
la réussite
whole
du cinéma
world.
français à
Do you
l'international?
think this is the secret of the
Oui.
success of
Oui,
French
bah oui.
cinema?
Non, je
Yes,
sais pas si c'est
exactly.
ça le secret de la réussite
I
du
don't know
cinéma
if
français à
it's the secret
l'international,
of
mais en tout cas, moi,
French
je trouve que c'est
cinema
ça
abroad,
le
but I
secret
think
de la
this is the
réussite
secret
des œuvres.
of
C'est quand, comme
the
disait Camélia tout à l'heure,
success
quand on
of
parle
any
de
work of
l'intime
art
et que cette
is that
intime
when
ne
you
soit pas juste
deal
une
with
espèce d'intime
your
égocentrique, mais
intimacy,
au
an
contraire un
intimacy
moyen
that is not
pour toucher le plus de monde
selfish,
possible,
but
parce que
it's
c'est le
just
but.
a way of
C'est ce qui nous donne envie, c'est
opening to the
de
others.
raconter des histoires et d'émouvoir aussi par ces
People
histoires.
want also
Et
to
en effet, je
tell,
pense que c'est le
to
plus
hear the
difficile dans
stories and to
l'acting, que ce soit en
discover
tant
the
qu'acteur,
stories.
en
So
tant
that's the
que
most
scénariste,
difficult
réalisatrice,
way of approaching a work,
et tous
whether
les
you're an
métiers du
actor
cinéma.
or a director,
Mais je pense que
to
en effet,
deal with
c'est par
your
ce chemin
intimacy.
qu'on
But
arrive
that's the way you do it, is
toucher les gens.
by being private.
Camélia?
Oui, non, mais c'est sûr, c'est ce qu'on disait, et c'est même pas forcément
Yes,
que dans le
that's
cinéma, hein,
obvious. It's not only in film, I think.
et
I
parfois
do
comme
believe
c'est
in this
là où
in
j'avais une petite
every
anecdote par rapport à
field.
ça que tu disais, surtout dans l'instant,
Maybe
ça peut
that's
être
a
aussi
bit
quelque chose de très égocentrique
different
et
from what I said. It can
par
also be
exemple, à
very
partir du moment où,
self-centered.
un être humain décide de coucher sur
If
le papier ce qu'il y a à
a
l'intérieur,
human being
il va toucher
decides
quelque
to
chose de très profond, quoi.
express what they have
Là,
inside, it can always
le
touch
cinéma
someone else. That's the beauty
a
of
une image
cinema and of
par rapport
art
à
in
ça.
general. Truffaut was
Il est
right.
magnifique aussi.
Aussi.
Vous avez un autre truc à ajouter là-dessus?
Anything else to add?
Eh bien, Noé, Anthony.
Well, Noé, Anthony, Hugo, Camélia, Zita, thank you very much for this hour we spent together, for the 10 to watch in Busan Festival. Thank you and see you soon.